There isn't much crossover between competitive Pokemon and a solo run. Without getting in the weeds here, there's an obvious difference between going against actual human players with maxed out Pokemon and then just playing the vanilla game starting at level 5 while only going against AI programmed for Game Boy 30 years ago. Things like the experience group and the level up learn set, they just don't matter in competitive, and ultimately that's why a competitive monster like Executor turns out to be just kind of middle of the road in this format. All that is to say that Dragonite is a polarizing Pokemon. We've covered Rap on the channel in the past, but for a quick refresher, if you are faster than the enemy Pokemon, they simply do not get to play the game. There's zero counterplay unless your name is Gengar, and Dragonite is the primo Rap user in Generation 1. It has high stats, it's already naturally fast, but with a single use of agility, the game just devolves into an 85% accuracy dice roll as you play solitaire in Pokemon form. Now with that information, you might be thinking, hey, Dragonite's gotta be one of the best Pokemon, but it's actually kind of ranked barely in the top 20 with most of the current OU viability rankings, and it's not without its flaws. Now first off, the Dragon typing in Gen 1 it's just alright, it's just kind of there. It's not bad, but there's just not much to it. Dragonite and its pre-evolutions are the only dragons that there are, and the only dragon move is Dragon Rage, which doesn't actually do dragon damage. And I just always got the feeling that it was just kind of like tacked on to be like a cool boss type enemy for something like Lance without too much thought put into it. Now diving into Dragonite, I already mentioned the very high stats, and it's tied for second in the entire game in terms of base stat total, and it sports the single highest attack stat in Generation 1. There's nothing to really complain about here, but the learn set is where the first issues start to arise. We get Rap and Agility from the start of the game. That would be great if this was competitive, but this is a speed run, and the ultimate goal here, don't forget, is to beat the game as fast as you can, and Rap is directly opposed to that goal. It's a slow move, and you're just going to be stuck using it for a solid chunk of the game, so it's going to add up. And if you look at the TMs, you'll notice some great coverage here. You got moves like Ice Beam, Blizzard, Thunderbolt, and even an early Bubble Beam, but remember, these are all special attacks. But we have the highest base attack in the entire game, and it looks like the only way to take advantage of this is going to be Body Slam or maybe Double Edge if we're desperate enough. This presents a problem that I've talked about in other videos. Dragonite is what I would like to call a member of the Muscle Mage Club. You've got this monstrous attack stat that you would love to make use of, but in many moments during the run, you'll be relying on special moves, and in many ways it feels like the fundamental design of this Pokemon just neutralizes what it's supposed to be. It takes away its biggest strength. But let's get to the gameplay before we continue to discuss the DNA of our goofy dragon boy. I went back and forth on how to play this run. This is a very interesting run. We'll talk about it as we go on. I tried different strategies while trying to still get a solid time for the Brock split. So what I do here is I fight the Nidoran trainer that's immediately to the left of Viridian Forest. I battle the first optional bug catcher, and by the time we're done, this will get me to level 8, and that is ultimately where I decided to go ahead and take on the rock solid Pokemon trainer. The reason we are in yellow version is to try to minimize the volume that we use Rap, and it starts right here. In red version, Geodude having defense curl can waste a lot of time, and even though I am going to take some damage here, 3 Leers take Rap from only doing 1 point of damage to doing 2 to 3 damage per tick, which definitely speeds things up. Now red version has this infuriating tendency where you'll use Leer or something like that, and then Geodude uses a defense curl, and that loop is just going to continue for like 30 seconds straight, so I really wanted to avoid that, but eventually you'll Wrap down, not that bad, and then you'll move on to Onix. One fact in Generation 1 Pokemon always rings true: Onix is pathetic and it cannot do much damage, so please guys, don't be scared even if you're missing a ton of health on Onix. We channel our inner competitive nature here, we use an early agility, and now that we outspeed, we're primed to use Rap. Now I am going to set up 3 Leers on Onix as well, but its defense is so high that the best you can do with Rap is that you can make it start to do 1 to 2 damage at the 3 Leer threshold. It doesn't matter if you use all the way up to 6 Leers, it's always going to be 1 to 2 damage. But from that point, you basically just hope you don't miss, hold down that Rap button, and eventually you'll get that first badge. To go back to some Dragonite problems, I think we have 3 overarching issues that will ultimately hold this run back. First is the lack of being able to take advantage of that beefy attack stat for a while. We've kind of talked about it. The second is the slow experience group. It strikes once again. And finally, the typing. I don't have a problem with dragon typing. I love the elemental resistances, they're pretty helpful, but the flying typing, in my opinion, I hate it. It's never helped out a Pokemon in a solo run ever. All it does is give you extra weaknesses, with the main one being that double weakness to ice, and we're just inching closer and closer to Mama Lorelei. The entire run is going to revolve around it, and in the meantime, all we can do in the short term in the early game is manage our Rap PP, progress, and really just do the best that you can. And I'm going to be doing the minimal path in Mount Moon, but something I have to bring up is that Dragonite would be so much better if it could just learn Mega Punch. I cannot fathom why it doesn't learn this move, but it would solve so many issues and it would speed up the run fairly significantly. But at the end of the day, we can only play the Pokemon as it is designed. But I really wanted to bring this up because I specifically remember my jaw dropping when I learned that, oh, you can't actually learn Mega Punch. Even though we have this big dragon that clearly has big little beefy hands, it can't learn a punch. And to be honest, I'm still kind of mad about it. Arriving in Cerulean, that slow level up group has Dragonite feeling kind of weak, but we can take advantage of our toolkit and our water resistance by taking on Misty immediately to pick up some much needed experience. Now the strategy here is once again very similar to competitive Pokemon. Agility to ensure that I outspeed, and rapping until you beat the Starmie, just as the good Lord intended. Now there are some solo run nuances to take note of, mainly the badge boost glitch, as I take advantage of 3 agilities here on Staryu just to get more attack. And I found that I like to get Starmie to at least -1 defense. -2 feels pretty good too. And you just kind of speed that rap portion of the game up. You do a little bit more damage. But since we resist water moves, I think Misty felt pretty consistent here. She'll only go for tackle, so it felt like a fairly safe fight to get through. And most importantly, we get a lot of catch-up experience. After the battle, I want to talk about the optimization process of the run. Since we're only watching the final run today, I did like 5 total Dragonite runs because I had a completely different strategy in the early iterations of the route. I was using 2 early candies to help speed up Nugget Bridge, but ultimately I went away from it to help out the late game. Outside of that, Misty's experience does help out a ton, but let's not forget we have access to Bubble Beam, and it's very, very good here. No matter how you look at it, Rap is a gimmicky, weak move that's kind of slow, and even a special move that's decently powerful like Bubble Beam goes a long way into making your run not to become a complete slog where every battle is just bloating your time. Rival number 2 is a fight that I don't think you can lose it. Unlike Red and Blue, you don't have that really bulky Pidgeotto up front with Sand Attack. Rather, you just have the Sand Attack on Sandshrew, which Bubble Beam can one-shot. And since we'll be relying on special moves to get through the fight, it really doesn't matter if you get growled early by Sparrow. As a matter of fact, you probably want that. And the only thing to really keep in mind in the short term is that you really have to manage your power points just so that you can make it through the next segment of the game without healing. You'll save a lot of time that way. Now, my friends, as you may or may not know, Nugget Bridge and the path to Bill's house contains the single highest cluster of mandatory battles in the entire game. And I think I've done everything that I can, but even with the extra Misty experience and Bubble Beam, there are just lots of ranges, there's lots of failed one-shots along the route, which directly impacts Dragonite's overall time. It's not terrible, but I will say that PP management is one of the more annoying aspects of the run. It's really hard to map out exactly how much you'll need since there's a lot of variables. How many times is Rap gonna hit? Will you hit that 85% accuracy? And I actually had to restart a couple of runs here just to try to avoid healing. And you'll see that by the time I get to the end in this run, that I'm down to just a single use of Rap left at the very end. So if you are stubborn and you don't want to utilize Leer, you don't want to kind of plan out that kind of stuff, you might find parts of the game like this to be extremely frustrating. And I would say up to this point, the run has been kind of questionable. And my initial thoughts playing this Pokemon was, number 1, I'm never going to forgive Game Freak for not letting this thing learn Mega Punch. And number 2, this little Sky Potato feels awful to play up to this point, but our fortune is about to take a turn. It's time for everyone's favorite overpowered Generation 1 move, Body Slam. We can finally access our Generation 1 top tier attack stat, and it's going to make the run significantly better, as you would probably expect. Dragonite also needs candy, so I will get that Gentleman Candy. And if you need a visual demonstration for whatever reason, here is Body Slam just eviscerating the third rival, and it feels almost cathartic to do this after using Rap for so long. What is there to really say about Pokemon Yellow Surge? They gave this man bad AI and gave him a single Pokemon just because the anime was popular. Now, it's not impossible for him to beat you here, but you can also kind of tell from the fact that I didn't really heal how much I kind of cared up to this point. I think if you agility and get a minor badge boost to your attack and outspeed, and then you guarantee the 2-shot range, it felt like that just guaranteed the fight, but I'm over it. I think we move on and talk about more important things. Now, ladies and gentlemen, since I'm not doing a blind run, that means we actually get to see the split data early today, but first, let me mention Thunderbolt. I'm not going to be learning it right now, and that's because of the moveset constraints. I'm hanging on to Body Slam, Agility, and Wrap for a very long time for this run, and you'll eventually see how we kind of swap things around. As for the split data, I chose to be very ambitious, and I went against Venusaur's 2-hour, 5-minute time, which is like a 94.5 rating. Pretty good. I didn't think Dragonite had the tools to reach this ultimately, and it looks like we're kind of right here if you look at the numbers, but I did want to dangle that little sausage on a stick in front of me to motivate me just to push that much harder, because I really do like Dragonite. I love Dragonite as a Pokemon, and despite having some frustrating sections and needing some luck here and there, I really enjoyed this run overall. My initial goal when I first started playing and optimizing was to get this thing into the A tier, and it felt impossible at first, but I just kept thinking. I kept refusing to think that something with stats as high as Mew could be slipping into B tier territory. Normally we skip over Rock Tunnel and nothing really happens here, but I just want to call out this little stupid quirk of the run. I needed to find at least a level 17 Geodude because I need just 200 experience later in the game to hit a level up. And with Bubble Beam, it was a quick one-shot, and I just kind of felt like this was the easiest way to get 200 experience. It's not something you see very often, and I thought it was kind of cool. With that out of the way, we can skip ahead to Celadon, and I do the shop buy immediately. There's no vitamins, but some things of note is that I will go pick up Ice Beam, and I will learn it immediately over Bubble Beam, and I'll finally pick up my Super Repels and the Great Ball so that I can go catch a Doduo right away before I pick up that HM for Fly. Now we can zoom through the Rocket Hideout. Not much to say here, not surprising. I think potentially maybe a better way to handle this is that you could keep Bubble Beam a little bit longer to help the PP burden, and I'm pretty sure we all feel that burden from time to time, but it is something you can manage. It's not that bad. Basically, you just need to make sure that you leave this section of the game with at least 4 Ice Beams at the end of the Giovanni fight so that you can skip a heal before Pokemon Tower. And it's because you're going to need 2 Ice Beams for each of the Ghastlies for that first Channeler fight there. I don't want to talk about the Ghastlies all the time. We know about them. I mention them a lot. If you can't one-shot them, there's always that small risk that something bad happens. But I'm pretty sure a 2-shot is about the best that most Pokemon can do. We do fine. I just wanted to talk about PP. We're done. This will transition us to Silph, and I think this is the most crucial moment in a run to see if it's going to do well, and I had to add in some extra stuff to set myself up for the future. I will be going to the 10th floor today because I need that Machoke Rocket Grunt experience, and I really want that rare candy, and then you'll notice that with that Geodude experience from earlier, I'll perfectly level up to 31 after the Card Key Grunt, and this is where we're going to actually use our first rare candies. I'm going to level up to 35, and I felt like this was kind of like the best blend to give you a power spike, but it also doesn't hurt you too much in the later game. But I say we just dive into rival number 5. From this point on, Cloyster is basically the biggest threat of the run for a long time. Now, it goes without saying that even a lightly thrown Ice Cube can beat up Dragonite, so it's just something to keep in your mind. I don't love setting up on Sand Slash, but even if I get sand attacked, I'm still going to go all in and see if I can do it. And if I reset, I reset. What's a few resets doesn't really matter. Not going to be the end of the world. All things considered, I see a sand attack miss, which is great, but Slash does hurt a lot. And if you remember the Dratini video, Chip and Dip is the new strategy. I learned the damage ranges, and I'll use Wrap to get a problematic Pokemon into a range where my move can just knock them out, and then we'll go for that kill shot. Now, Thunderbolt would make this fight a little bit easier. I hear you barking, big dog. But Ice Beam is just so useful. It's more useful in the run than it is to have Thunderbolt. I'll say that. There's too many areas that it's just really good at, and even though this is a little bit slow, keep in mind this: it's effective, it's methodical, and most importantly, it works. But like most optimized runs, the final attempt that you're going to see here, it looks great, but a lot of these fights did involve a lot of planning and number crunching just to get them feeling pretty good. Now I think at this point, we know the drill. We've planned out the items, and with the hidden revive in the Safari Zone, my bags will be full. And when you get yourself set up to this point right here, things are gonna start to go downhill fairly quickly for the rest of the game. Now just a quick reminder that full bags stop the gym leaders from reading that bloated text when they give you their TMs after you beat them. And it really adds up if you do it for like 5 of the 8 gyms. But as far as Erika commentary goes, Ice Beam, we do have it. Moving on to Koga, this is where the lines for the run start to blur a little bit when you think about speed versus consistency. Initially, I was using wrap for every single Pokemon in this fight until they were in the health range where a body slam could knock them out. But what I ended up doing was wrapping the first Venonat only, and then I would use a single agility on the second one since it doesn't have sleep powder. And after spending a lot of time on this run, I just decided we would level up a little bit higher in Silph, and then I would just go for hard hitting moves rather than the safer wrap strat. And ultimately, I think only using wrap when necessary is what saved the most time when you look back at this run as a whole. After the battle was a very, very important part of the run. Remember, I said that early iterations of this route was using really early candies, and while it did speed up the early game just a little bit, the early game, at the grand scheme of things, is insignificant compared to the slowdown that you'll experience in the late game if you're missing some levels. Now, I'm going to use all of my candies here to get up to level 44, and that's so that I can avoid Pokemon Mansion encounters. And as I take that brisk swim down to Cinnabar, there are some more things to talk about. Now, to cover really quickly what I do here, I'm going to be grabbing and immediately using the final 2 candies of the run. I'll also be picking up Blizzard for later, and what I want to touch on here is maybe something that's kind of obvious, but it's not a topic that I really discuss much. Early candy usage is fine. I often test it out, and it did really speed up that Nugget Bridge portion of the game, but I think if you lay out all the battles and you look out where it helps, it maybe lets you guarantee some ranges and save turns on, I don't know, not even half of the 24 Pokemon that you'll see in that area. For me, it was the slowdown when you get to this part of the game that really messed you up. It forced you to hold on to your candies, and if you want to put some numbers to it, I love putting numbers on things. Using 2 candies early to go from level 16 to 18, it only takes about 1700 experience. Now, if you use a candy from going from 40 to 41, it's over 6,000 experience. And by the time I candy to 46, a level costs 8,000 experience to get through, which means that one candy this late in the game is worth 10 times more. It's 10 times more valuable than the early game candy in terms of experience. Unless the early game is life or death, or if you just have extra candies that you were gonna skip anyway, it's just not worth it when you look at the numbers. And guys, I would sit here all day and I would tell you something creative, and I would act like maybe Dragonite has even the smallest chance of knowing if TM28 is actually Tombstoner, brother, or not. But I think the truth is that this little sky potato is a little bit too busy looking ahead to Lorelei. Rather than Blaine, I'm actually going to go to Sabrina, so sorry for the misdirection if you thought I was actually answering the Tombstoner question and then it hasn't been like a pre-recorded bit for like 4 years at this point. But for Sabrina commentary, I outspeed Abra. I can agility once on Kadabra, basically for free since it outspeeds me, and from there it's just not really that difficult of a fight. But I do think there's a reason that I went here first, so let's talk about that. Blaine gets a special intro, not because it's going to be the most excruciating battle you've ever seen on a screen, but just for the headaches that it caused me when I was routing and initially playing this run. This battle, at the end of the day, is what caused me to scrap my original 3rd run and reroute the entire candy usage because it was just too risky and too slow when I was doing it the other way. Blaine is a wild card in Pokemon Yellow, and if he's firing on all cylinders, it can be one of the toughest battles in the game, but specifically, I had to use that old chip and dip wrap strategy, and a single miss into something like maybe Rapidash Growl or Arcanine using Reflect, it made this battle feel like it lasted an eternity. Now, this is the new way. Just like with Koga, I just set up an early agility and I basically just go straight damage. Now, if I got a reset, so be it. It would be much faster at the end of the day, but I was willing to take it. And you're gonna see that I got kind of unlucky here and I barely live with just 2 HP after a crit, but rerouting candies to be a higher level here definitely paid off big time in this final run compared to what I was doing. Seriously, that old battle took like 4 times longer than this. Giovanni on paper is a pretty easy battle, but I have the worst luck here. A single Ice Beam can take out Dugtrio, and a Sand Attack would be awful, but here's kind of where the fight goes bad. I want to set up at least 2 agilities, but all 3 would be really cool here. I end up seeing a Slash from Persian, then I get Screeched, which lowers my defense, and then I get a 4-hit Fury Swipe, and that takes this potato all the way down to 14 HP, and things might be looking dire, and you might be thinking, hey, we're in trouble, but the 3rd agility does some really magical things. It makes the rest of the fight a series of one-shots, and the thought process behind this one is that I'll take the risk on setting up on Persian any day of the week over tanking a Rhydon Rock Slide, but it really wasn't that bad as this attempt makes it out to be. This is actually a bad attempt, and I still won, so do with that information what you will. Moving straight into rival number 6, this is a pick your poison battle. Ice Beam, like we've seen in rival number 5, will trivialize the first 2 Pokemon, but never forget Cloyster with stab ice moves will require you to chip it down with Wrap, which does take a little time. So I guess you're kind of like, well, whatever way you want to do it probably costs about the same time is what I'm trying to say. Now here, I immediately go on offense to take out Sandslash, and I have the very annoying task of setting up on Execute, which poisons me, and that means I'm on the clock at this point. I'm missing half of my health, but the rest of the fight isn't terrible if you at least have a little bit of HP left. Because Thunderbolt can one-shot the Cloyster, Magneton's Thunder Shock, it's only neutral, it doesn't really hurt a lot. I can one-shot the Kadabra, and if you make it to the end and you're at least decently healthy, Flareon just doesn't have a move that can deal with the amount of HP that you have left, and it's going to give you a pretty easy win. All of that candy usage led us to this moment of hitting level 50 after the battle, which is important. I know I brought this up, but one of the more annoying aspects of Pokemon Yellow isn't the fact that like 5 Pokemon have slightly better moves but still use 30-year-old Crackerjack AI. It's the fact that they slightly raise levels in places like the Safari Zone, Pokemon Mansion, Victory Road. This means like in a run like Mega Rayquaza. Like I could have done Lorelei like level 48 or something like that, but you would never even want to try it because you're going to get random wild encounters through the repels that would negate any time save that you get. When comparing versions, I just feel like it's one of the major areas that requires your attention, and you have to do a lot of stuff. Like you have to plan on being level 41 inside of Pokemon Mansion if you're playing Pokemon Yellow, or you would want to be level 50 inside of Victory Road. And it just feels cheap. It feels like a way to artificially inflate the time in terms of a speed run. Now most people just think about trivial things like, oh, Giovanni's harder or Lance has better moves, but no one notices the true crime of making even the best Pokemon have to be level 50 going through Victory Road. But tangent over, now it's time for some split data. Sadly, this is not what you want to see. We have red splits down the board, everything's red. But remember guys, I said earlier, I was being incredibly ambitious comparing this Pokemon to Venusaur, but I did that so that it would motivate me to do better and better. And despite these red splits, we're going to be starting the Elite Four just a couple of minutes past the 2-hour mark, which is still pretty good. And if you take into account how far this Pokemon has came since the blind run, I guess you haven't watched the blind run because it doesn't matter. It came a long way. I would say that the current time we have now is pretty much the best that you can hope for. Now remember guys, we're double weak to ice. The Lorelei battle is what this entire run has kind of revolved around, and I do want to dive in, but I also need to bring up a change that I've made going ahead in all of my runs for the future. So listen up if you care about the tier list. I always deposit my HM Pokemon before the Elite Four, and this is one of the last remaining artifacts from when this part of the game didn't matter. The game time would run into the Hall of Fame, so depositing them now or just watching them go in the Hall of Fame, it pretty much costs the same, and just aesthetically speaking, I like the clean Hall of Fame screen. It's been a very long time since I've been stopping the timer after the champion fight, which means that for years and years and years, I've been losing a pretty solid chunk of time for depositing my Pokemon for no reason, but I just continued to do it because I've always done it, which is never a good reason to do anything. And I finally bit the bullet here, and I'm going to be skipping it from now on. Now, since I'm a nerd, I spent a while, dozens and dozens of tests to see how much time it cost with versus without depositing the Pokemon. And the long and short of what I'm trying to say here is that you'll save an average of 22 seconds of in-game time here. I feel very confident that I can just chop off 22 seconds off of every old run and call it even. but I really wanted to bring it up because I finally did it. I've been wanting to do it for a long time, and I think runs will be that much better because of it. And here's what's really sad. It doesn't help Dugong. Dugong was conveniently 2 hours and 31 seconds, so it would just be still just over that 2 hour mark. But we're not here to talk about that idiot Dugong. Dugong loses again, but enough rambling. It's Elite Four time. I'm going to do a pause here because while you usually pick yellow version over red because of the time saves in the early game, specifically at Brock, you can also pick yellow version because of Dugong's weird AI if you specifically have a setup move. Now agility is towards the bottom in terms of badge boost glitch moves, but with high base stats, every little boost does count. Now if you didn't know, Lorelei's Dugong basically has a mind of its own in Pokemon Yellow, and there have been fully produced videos diving into it if you want like a full rundown. But no matter what, at its core, you just need to know that there's an extremely high chance that it's going to use rest on turn 2. This means that if you chip it down with anything, you tank one of its moves, and then you immediately start to set up, you can get 3 full setups if it uses rest for free. This means that you can finesse this fight even if you have a double weakness like we're about to see, so let's kind of get into it. Now with that said, Lorelei's weird, and sometimes you'll see random stuff like this where it doesn't even attack. But I think the important thing here is that I'm routed to tank one move from Dugong, bank on that rest, and I'll just reset if it doesn't happen. But everything's just kind of weird here. I really do highly recommend you watch that Lorelei Dugong AI video. You can just YouTube those words and it'll probably work. But this right here is Rap's Destiny. It's why it's still on the learn set. I'll be chipping down ideally to about 140 HP using Thunderbolt. Moving on. Cloyster can be cleanly one-shot with 3 agilities. Slowbro usually requires at least 1 chip to get it into Thunderbolt range. But since I didn't take any damage early, I just go for the knockout here, and it kind of pays off for me. Jinx is always going to be guaranteed with the body slam. And finally, Lapras needs to be chipped down. Use the old chip and dip to about 136 HP. Now, it's not the most compelling conclusion, but in practice, this fight right here felt like a physics problem. And this is that A+ 4.0 degree result right here. So now Rap is done, its destiny is now complete, and now we got Blizzard on the set. Now Bruno actually has a slight little bit of nuance this week, and since I was usually taking a Dugong hit and I didn't want to heal, I was going for a more consistent strategy. I still do it here, but I set up 2 agilities early. It'll put the Hitmons into guaranteed Thunderbolt range. It'll save you a little bit of time overall, make things a little bit easier. And depending on if the first Thunderbolt does enough damage on the Machamp, you might want to go for Blizzard after that, but there's really not a whole lot to talk about here. Now, this might be shocking, but cutting corners and being a lower level, it made Agatha the hardest fight in the entire run, and there's really nothing that you can do about it. Usually, you'll level up after the first Pokemon, but just to keep this short, because this isn't that interesting, the combination of Poison, Hypnosis, Confusion, and the other Agatha specials, combined with some Pokemon taking 3 or more hits, it just gives her a lot of chances to do something detrimental, and this is nothing new. If you don't have access to Earthquake or Dig, this does have the potential to become pretty bad, and sadly Dragonite's learn set fails the most at this moment. There's not a whole lot of actual commentary to give, but I do have to set up a couple of agilities after the first Pokemon, and it's just a bit of a slog to get through. So having things break down a little bit here and there after having such a solid run before this, it really wasn't a big deal to me because Dragonite has a lot of questionable areas, and I think having 2 resets on Agatha at the end of the day, I'm fine with it. It's just not a good fight, and there's just not much that you can do about it to make it a good fight. We can cover Lance in just a few words. I have Thunderbolt for Gyarados, and I have Blizzard for the rest. I do want to set up 1 agility to outspeed Aerodactyl, and I'm going to do it on the first Dragonair because one of the 9,000 weird things about Gen 1 is that using agility would just reset the speed loss if I get Thunder Waved. So even if it uses it, I can just bounce right back, but we got 1 battle left, and I say we just dive into it. So to start this one off, let me just say I take a risk that Sandslash will not use Slash 3 times in a row. It's very rare to see it, and in fact, This right here is the only time out of every single practice run that, and maybe any yellow run ever, that I've ever seen 3 slashes in a row. So it was a risk I was willing to take, and I just kind of instantly lose here trying to get to 3 agilities. It is what it is. Jumping back in, I'm sure someone else might have a better idea, and I'm sure they'll let me know in the comments, but I just wanted to front load the bad luck of this fight, because if you get those 3 badge boosts, it really does just smooth over the rest of the fight. And what you'll see here is I get a little unlucky. I get beaten up pretty bad by the Sand Slash. I'm down in the red health, but we are moving on, so let's just play it out like I usually do. Alakazam is going to be a guaranteed 1 hit with the boost, and Executor does get shredded with Blizzard. It will survive, it gets some more damage with Barrage, Body Slam will clean up, and now the fight gets a little confusing to me in the moment, but let's break it down play by play so I can kind of clarify watching it back. Now, I can't one-shot the Magneton, and it goes for Thunder Wave. And I'm pretty sure I visibly rolled my eyes here because I thought this was going to be a reset 100%. But going into this part, I had 544 speed, so even though my speed is completely gutted, I still have 136 speed, and it was kind of just really confusing to wrap your head around in that exact moment to process that data real quick, which is why you'll eventually see me pause a few seconds when I get to the cloister, because I thought for sure I lost, but since I had so much speed, I still outsped it. Now at this point, I can still just one-shot the cloister with Thunderbolt, but then Flareon at the end provides some shenanigans like it usually tends to do. Now we start off hot with a quick attack, and that takes me to 5 HP, and I pretty much thought this was over, guys. I went for Thunderbolt for no real reason other than it was a mistake, but it does almost do half, but I do get the paralysis. Now on turn 2, Flareon gets fully paralyzed, but it was going for the quick attack for the kill shot, and that means I get off a Body Slam. But since I accidentally used Thunderbolt on turn 1, the Fire Kitty lives on just 2 HP, but on turn 3, Flareon concedes, it doesn't go for quick attack, and Dragonite is going to end the run in a wild finish. Dragonite finishes the run with a 2 hour, 12 minute, and 46 second time, and while it didn't beat Venusaur's run, it is good enough for a 92.35 rating, which accomplishes the initial goal that I had for this Pokemon. Now remember, I had to reroute everything after I normally would have stopped, just because the double weakness and kind of knowing when to cheese the game, and it just made for a weird dynamic. I did put a little extra time into this run, but I'm very happy with the results overall. Now if we flip over to the tier list, this will land Dragonite in a very solid 11th place, but I kind of get the feeling that it might slip down to like 14th place after the next vanilla run video. But no matter how you look at it, there's no shame in being in the A tier. I think this was a very, very fun run to figure out. Now special shout out to my channel members and patrons. The support does mean a lot, and thank you for taking the time out of your day to watch my little old video. If you made it this far, you're a real one, and I guess all that's left to say is that I guess I'll catch you on the next one. Bye.